All right, we're doing another pedal demo. This time we have the Lauren Audio Mustang. This thing is super unique. Everything he makes is fascinating and with like the highest quality. This one's going to be a fun one. It's such a unique animal, and I think a lot of folks may have grabbed it in the past, didn't quite know what to do with it, and moved on from it maybe a little too quick. It's something I go back and forth on different things that I want to use it for as well. But it's just got such a unique preampy character and drive character. I would say if there's one thing maybe to settle in your mind, like what is this pedal? I would say think of it more as a preamp before thinking of it as a drive pedal. Of course, it does the drive pedal thing, but I have found so much application out of it being something that is acting as a sort of, not always on, but could be always on, preampy size adder pedal with a hint of grit. One thing too, it's like the EQ on it is very, we'll showcase that here, but it's not like, it doesn't do drastic changes. So maybe in that regard, it's not a typical preamp pedal, which would be more of like, EQ adjustments and things like that. It does have a tone knob. It's just finite in how it acts as EQ. But anyways, we'll kind of mess with it from top to bottom and see what all the knobs do independently and together and some cool spots. So noteworthy things in the chain. I've got a Pinstripe multi-buffer. I'm actually going out of output 1 as opposed to some of the other pedal videos. And then I'm using a tone press compressor, and that's pretty much it. Going through the rest of my board at that point, controlling this. Not this time with an RJM controller. I'll just be switching it on and off with the foot switch because I'm using my Audition so that I can actually stack it a little easier with some other pedals. A JMI amp on the left, a Fender Prosonic amp on the right, and then I'm using my Veritas Portlander with Lindy Fralin PAFs, Modern PAFs. And this is the clean tone. And here's the Mustang. Now you notice with the way that it's set right now, there's a bit of like almost like a clippy sort of crunch to it. That's one of the unique things about it to me. It's not always exactly what I want, but it is fascinating. And there's different ways you can dial it so that it doesn't have that same clippy crunch and has a different form of gain. But right away, the first things that I noticed just turning it on these settings here, which gain's on the left, tone's in the middle, and level is on the right, is that the way that it lifts and kind of makes things just feel a little bit bigger and fuller is so interesting. The first time I used one of these was on a amp modeler, the Iridium, Strymon Iridium, and the low-end size that it added was so meaningful, and that's what made it so hard to ever want to take it off my board because it added such a necessary low-end that amp modelers don't often supply correctly. And so it brought back a size to my tone that I needed. So that's one of the best applications for it, but today we're using amps. Yeah, it's still adding a really cool size though. Let's turn some knobs and see what happens here. So let's start with the gain on the left. Very fuzzy with maxed out gain. It's so squashy, so splatty. mean, that's kind of sweet. That's pretty sweet. Let's go right before that splatty fuzz. It's just unique, man. I don't really know how to describe it. I mean, you hear what it's doing, so let's keep exploring. That's tone all the way down. I mean, what a nice little gentle lift. That, right there, that's an always-on tone to me. Which is odd because the tone's all the way down, yet it feels like it's just kind of like balanced. Yeah, that feels actually balanced, like exactly the same as clean tone to me. With like a hint of like a harmonic hi-fi richness. Let's I'm going to throw on my first or maybe even second gain stage. Let's do second gain stage, overdriver, with this sort of preampy tone and hear it with and without it. And with overdriver still on, let's turn off the Mustang. Fascinating. I mean, it's hard to say, is a box this big worth a subtle change like that? I mean, that's for you to decide, but that's an inspiring tone the way that it lifts. That's an always-on kind of location to me. They're very cool. Let's keep going. I wanted to bring attention to the fact that the tone knob, when maxed out, clips. Really fascinating. Yeah, okay, that's cool. Let me compare that to like a second gain stage with boost. There's something really like wholesome and pure about the sort of fuzzy grit that has solo. That's really cool. I mean, I know a moment ago I called it maybe more of a preamp pedal than a drive pedal, but I recant that statement. It's cool. That's kind of like, that's the pedal's grit. That's what that's doing right there. And then when we inch it up into the amps, I know I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here, but I actually want to throw some wet effects onto this because that's crazy. I want to know what the wet effects do with that. I don't know where to classify that, but it's cool. I wouldn't necessarily use big effects like that with that kind of tone, but it's cool hearing the amps just compress and pulse with those wet effects with this kind of gain. Gnarly. So something I'm noticing, there's a lot of finite independent control across all three knobs. You can use each one to almost like drop level, clean the pedal up a little bit more. And like, you know, since the gain is adding a different kind of clipping and then the tone is adding a different kind of fuzz and clipping, you can kind of inch in each one as you want and then use the level to sort of give you really as much or little volume as you really need to hit your amps harder or less hard if you want the pedal to do a lot of the talking. So that's mostly like clean right there. That's not adding a lot. There's like a baby little bit of grit there. Such a cool tone, man. I mean, now I'm personally finding it hard to find a bad tone. The tone we actually started on was not my favorite. Everything else we've done so far is becoming more and more inspiring and more cool to me than that first one. And that first one was just how I've used it in the past. So I feel like I actually did myself a bit of a disservice by not exploring it more like this and seeing some absolute crazy variety of what it could do. I think what you have to do is just kind of land on what do you want it to do. Do you want it to be a preamp? Do you want it to be a fuzz pedal? Do you want it to be a high gain drive? Because so far it's done all of those things extremely well. You know, it's fascinating even just kind of messing with the volume lower, so we're hearing more pedal drive. Then we kind of put it all at noon, and we start to inch up the level, and it's almost as if all of that gritty texture is now behind the cleaner tone, as if there's like a blend knob. All right, so I'm going to boost this into my first gain stage, which, let me actually kind of show what that sounds like here. So here's clean tone. First gain stage. Adding a tiny hint of grit and mostly just EQing, adding some like top end presence. So stacking that after the Mustang, so the Mustang is before, being sort of preampy in this kind of scenario. Here is Mustang by itself. And here's the addition of the first gain stage. First gain stage off. Back on. That's sweet, man. And you could apply that sort of same concept just by throwing a sort of EQ pedal after it, because that's mostly what my first gain stage is doing, with a hint of grit. But either way, I mean, that's kind of showing some of the flexibility and power of the Mustang. You just have to think about it in many different ways than just an ordinary sort of block-headed way of thinking, potentially, like a normal drive would give you, because it's not doing normal drive things. Lauren Audio, he's a creative guy, and he made a creative pedal here, and he did it with such a high quality. Super respect and admire his approach for making these kinds of things. Sweet, so let's just hear it with just the Mustang, kind of with that more aggressive setting, and just hear some like wet effects. That fat low end. That's cool. Let's compare that sort of palm mute texture to like my overdrive or second gain stage. Sounds great too, but it's not that fat thing that the Mustang is doing. Hi-fi rich harmonic thing in the top end. It's so interesting. I love that. With the first gain stage. Super cool. Let's hear it with just some swells with the Mustang by itself. That note right there, that howl, that sort of harmonic howl in the top end, that was definitely all Mustang. What a fine tone. I mean, I feel like I could kind of continue to go on for like an hour, but we're going to go ahead and cut it off because we showed the basic setup of controls and found a handful of sweet spots. So I hope this was enough to convince you. The Mustang is awesome. If you have it, don't sell it too quickly if you're trying to. And if you don't have it, maybe consider grabbing one because this thing can do a lot in a lot of different ways here. So that's the Lauren Audio Mustang.